Hello friends, my name is Amanda. Welcome to Feeding Artists. Today we're going to be going over color grading. So before we get into this video, I just wanted to very briefly go over the difference between color correcting and color grading. With color correcting, you're essentially just making sure that all of your clips match. Usually this is relevant if you're shooting with different cameras or you're shooting in different locations that have slightly different lighting situations. Color grading is more of a universal process where you're actually adjusting the color on all of your clips in order to achieve a particular mood or aesthetic. And there are two reasons that I wanted to go over this before getting into the video. Number one, color correcting is something that you always want to do before you start color grading. This will give you an even set of colors that you can then pick from in order to create a color grade that looks consistent across your entire film. The second reason is the way I go about color correcting versus color grading is slightly different. Since color correcting is more an individual basis and changing individual clips to match other clips, I will be changing the color on those individual clips. Where color grading is more of a universal processing, so I will actually be doing that on an adjustment layer. That way I can easily just click and drag it to put it across my entire video. So with that out of the way, let's get to the first step, which is color correcting. So I'm just using a sequence of 6 clips that I took of my friend Miles in our local park. And there's really only one clip that has a very different color from the other ones, and that is this one right here with the little tree branch. So to correct that, I'm going to first go to the color panel, and then I'm going to press this little icon right here, which is the comparison view. This icon's super useful for color correcting and color grading because you can see a reference right next to it. And then I'm just going to move this little dot just to get to the clip that comes right after this one. So some things that I can see are different right off the bat is the temperature. The one that I'm using as my reference is a lot warmer, so I'm just going to up my temperature slider. And then I'm also going to make this a little bit more green, so I'm actually going to lower my tint to bring it closer to green. And lastly, I'm just going to make it a little bit brighter, and that's relatively close as far as color. It isn't quite as contrasty as the clip I'm referencing to, but I'm actually going to go and edit that clip a bit as well. So I'm going to get off comparison view and I'm going to go to my next clip, and I'm actually going to lower the contrast just a little bit, and then I'm going to up the shadows, which is also in turn kind of lowering the contrast just in a bit of a different way. And then I'm just going to put the whites down a tiny bit, just because it looks like my sky area over here is very white. And the reason why I'm going out of my way to lower the contrast of this image and make it kind of a bit more grayed out is because that actually makes it a lot easier to pull colors out of this and really make it unique to what I want to do with the color grade. If I was actually smart, I would have just filmed this in a flatter picture profile, but I'm used to just shooting normal just because for talking to the camera, I normally don't put a super duper heavy grade on my videos, so just kind of out of habit, didn't do it because I'm stupid. But if you're planning to do a lot of heavy color grading, I would highly recommend looking into picture profiles, seeing how it works on your specific camera, and trying to go with one that is made to be more cinematic. So I'm just going to do kind of the same thing to all the other clips in this lineup, and then we'll get to color grading. Okay, so I've already set up my project. I'm going to be doing 3 different grades, so I have 3 different adjustment layers that are each going above 2 clips. And also I have 3 images over here which I will be using as my reference. And just a refresher, if you've forgotten how to make adjustment layers, just go to your project panel, click on that, click File, New, and then Adjustment Layer. So I'm going to be going from basically what I consider the easiest color grade to the hardest or just most involved color grade. So we're going to start right here in the middle with this tree clip again. And we're going to go to the comparison view. And my reference for this one is the music video for Drag Me Into the Woods by Holy Fawn, which was directed by Bird Sounds. So for this one, I'm just going to be using the basic correction window. And I always start out by adjusting my temperature slider. So I can see that the tones in my reference are a little cooler. So I'm just going to put it down. All right, and next I see that this doesn't have a ton of contrast. So I'm actually going to be really bold and put my contrast meter all the way down. I'm going to add a little bit more black in there just because I can see that this got really light. Put my exposure down a little bit, and we're going to put the shadows down again just to sort of darken up my image. And now we're going to go to the saturation. We're going to put that down since our original image is pretty desaturated. Then I want to make it a little darker, so I'm going to go into the shadows. We'll put the shadows all the way down too. Why not? So yeah, I think that generally matches our reference image pretty well. So that one was super easy. I just had to kind of make a few adjustments here and there, and there's our first color grade. Okay, so my second color grade is going to reference this photo by an artist and photographer named Lynn Satane. Again, we're going to start out in the basic correction window, and for this one, I actually want to add more warmth to it since the green does have more of like a yellowy hue to it. So I'm going to put my temperature meter up, and I'm going to add a little bit more green as well. So I'm going to put my tint down. And from here, something that's different about this image from the other one is that it actually seems pretty high contrast and you can see the colors a lot better. So I want to put my contrast up. Then the highlights, I'm going to go down since there's not a ton of brightness in the original. Shadows are going to go down just to give me a little bit more depth. And whites, again, are going to go down just because not a ton of whites in that original image. I'm going to put my blacks up just a little bit just to kind of even out the darker tones since there isn't too much dark in this original image. And then I'm going to put my saturation down just a tiny bit. So from basic correction, I'm going to go to the HLS secondary window. And this window is basically good for replacing colors or just adjusting colors. So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to make his skin and the wood on the bridge a little bit grayer. This is normally not the preferred thing. Normally you want to give people more color in their skin, but just since there really isn't any tan in this reference photo we're using, I kind of want to gray out the tan colors in the image that we have to work with here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this eyedropper and I'm just going to place it on his skin. And then I'm going to check this box that says color/gray, and that'll basically gray out everything that you haven't selected. And then I'm just going to adjust these sliders so I could get more colors selected, so I'm changing more stuff. I'm going to put the blur up a little. This is kind of similar to feather in Photoshop. So if you adjust the color a lot, sometimes you'll see like little tiny dots. So usually it's good to put the blur up a little bit. And once that's done, I'm just going to uncheck this box so I can see the entire image because that's a lot easier to work with. I'm going to go to my saturation slider and I'm going to put that down a fair amount. And his skin is looking relatively blue, which isn't really what I wanted. I just wanted it to look gray. But I want it to be a bit of a warmer gray, so I'm going to put the temperature up. And then I'm also just going to increase the contrast a little because that's also going to give me something closer to skin tone because I don't want him to look too much like a corpse. I just also don't want a really rich skin tone because it doesn't match the color palette I'm trying to go with. Alright, and from there, since our reference image doesn't have much blue, I want to try to take out this blue in the sky. So I'm going to go up top to my Lumetri color. I'm going to go to add Lumetri color effect. And this is going to give me another one of those HSL secondary panels that I can use. So again, taking the eyedropper, I'm going to try to get that blue. Alright, I can't seem to grab the blue from the sky. So what I'm going to do is I can see a little bit of the reflection on his shirt. So I'm going to grab that instead, and that's going to give me all the blues. Press the button again. Okay, and then I really don't want any blues in this, so I'm actually going to put my temperature slider just about all the way up, exactly all the way up. And just to give it a little bit more green, I'll just put the tint down a tiny bit. Alright, and then I'm just going to lower the saturation just a tiny bit as well, since the colors look a little weird to me, and I'd rather it be more gray. I think this is going to be my finished grade. The colors are more similar, it's a lot warmer and also kind of more desaturated in certain places, but still a lot more contrasty than the last grade we did. And for my last grade, I'm going to be using this photo by Kay Dargan as a reference. She always puts a lot of really cool colors in her photos, so I've kind of recently in my own photography been messing with trying to do edits like hers, and I thought it would be interesting to try to incorporate that in a video as well. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do again is to just go to my temperature meter, and right now I'm mostly going to be focusing on the background and matching that to the background of her photo. So I'm going to put my temperature down, and then I'm also going to put my tint up. And so I know when she edits her photos, what she usually does is puts the highlights all the way down, whites all the way down, shadows up, blacks up. And this will kind of get you that image I was talking about before, where it's just a really flat image that you can pull colors out of. So we're going to start with that. And I'll put the contrast down. Let's put the contrast all the way down, just to start as well. And obviously this looks really bad right now, but it'll look better, I promise. And so Kay's big thing that I kind of learned from her and watching her edit photos was the way that she used the curves panel. And what you want to do is just pin the center, and then you could start making your curve. So I'm going to add a little bit of contrast. I know I just kind of got rid of it, but we're just going to add a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to go over to my blues. And again, we're just going to pin the center. So I'm going to move the blue to like there for right now. I'm going to go into my greens. It looks like the green down. That might be kind of the color we're dealing with. So I'm actually going to go back into my basic correction now, and I'm going to kind of let up on some of the highlight, shadow, contrasty things because it seems like they're really overpowering the color that I'm adding. Okay, so you can see the colors are starting to look a little better. Just as a reference, if I were to uncheck the curves, that's kind of what it's doing. Just sort of making the greens pop a little more, making the blues go a bit more pink, which kind of matches in here. And yeah, I'm going to put the saturation down a little bit, since the first photo doesn't have a ton of saturation. I'm going to go back to my curves for a second. I want to add a tiny bit more contrast, so I'm just going to up this a little bit more. And I'm just basically going to bring the green and the blue both down a bit more, since I'm liking the color that's coming from that, but I want a little bit more of that coloration. So let's say I'll leave it there for now. And from here, we're starting to see that all the coloration we're putting to get our background closer to the background color in our original photo is really negatively impacting our skin tone. So I want to go in and edit that skin tone so that it looks more realistic. So we're going to go to our HSL secondary, and we're just going to click on the skin tone. So first thing I want to do is up the temperature to give him that more natural skin tone. And I also want to up the tint, bring it more towards pink, since he was going more towards blue and green. So we're taking it away from blue and green. I'm going to put the contrast up, just because that's going to give me a bit more color. Put my sharpen down a bit, and saturation can stay where it's at. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to these three circles, which are giving me controls for the midtones, shadows, and highlights. And I'm just going to play with those a bit. So I'm going to bring my midtones up. I'll put my shadows down. And I'm going to put my highlights up. Alright, so now he has a bit of a more natural skin tone. It's still definitely not natural, it's a bit desaturated, but you can see the difference. If I click this on and off, that's blue. And now he's not blue, which is ideal. And so now I think this grade is done. The colors are a little bit different. You can see the original one has kind of more of that like browny green in it over here for the trees. But I kind of like how this came out. I like the pink and purple in the sky, and I also like the green color of the trees, just like that cool green I really like. So here's what all of our color grades look like together. They obviously don't match, they weren't made to match, but just so you can kind of see the difference in the way all of these three grades look. So that is it for color grading. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like, maybe consider subscribing, and also feel free to drop your favorite color grade in the comments. I'd love to hear which grade you like the most. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Alright, if you've made it this far, I actually have one more secret color grade for you guys that I've been hiding over here in my project window.